Welcome back to On the Middle East, Al Monitor's podcast on the big stories in the region. My name is Amran Zaman, and today we'll be talking about violence in Iraq's oil-rich province of Kirkuk. Kirkuk is among several contested Iraqi territories that are claimed by Baghdad and the Kurdistan Regional Government. At least 4 people were killed and dozens injured after Kurds and Iran-backed Shia groups clashed in the province over the past week. Kirkuk is also home to ethnic Turkmens who oppose Kurdish claims and have been supported in this by Turkey. The flare-up is a chilling reminder of the mass slaughter of Kurds in and around Kirkuk under Saddam Hussein, and comes amid a new low in relations between the KRG and Baghdad. Since 2017, when the Kurds held their ill-fated referendum on independence, Baghdad has been systematically curbing Kurdish gains that were enshrined in Iraq's new constitution in the wake of Saddam's overthrow. With us here today to discuss this complex situation is Mohammed Salih, a scholar of Iraqi politics and a fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute in Philadelphia. Welcome to our program, Mohammed. It's great to have you with us here today.
Thank you so much, Amber. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So why is Kirkuk such a flashpoint in Iraq? What is the significance of this city?
Well, Kirkuk is often referred to as a microcosm of Iraq, and that's not an exaggeration. It's a place where basically, every major group in the country, every major ethnic and sectarian group in the country has a significant presence in. Be that Kurds, Arabs, Shia and Sunni Arabs, Turkmens, and also a smaller community of Christians in Kirkuk. So Kirkuk has been basically an issue from the very beginning of the creation of the Iraqi state. And the discovery of oil in the province by the British in the early 20th century was the really, the major reason that brought a lot of attention to Kirkuk, for better or worse, and a lot of it, turned out to be for worse, at least for the province's residents. And starting from the 60s in particular, there were organized campaigns and attempts by various Iraqi governments, particularly in the 70s and 80s and 90s under the Ba'ath government of Saddam Hussein. There was this organized so-called Arabization campaign where the Iraqi government began expelling many of the city and the provinces' Kurdish population to other nearby provinces. And also in the 80s, a significant sort of portion of the areas that were subjected to the so-called Anfal campaign, which was a genocide campaign by the Iraqi government. A significant portion of that was in the countryside of the Kirkuk province. And so as far as Kurds are concerned, Kirkuk holds a very really emotional place in Kurdish psyche.
In fact, they call it the Kurdish Jerusalem, don't they?
Right. So there are different things that Kirkuk is being called, in Kurdish political language. The expression that Kirkuk is the Jerusalem of Kurdistan was, coined or made popular. Actually, it was used before by a poet, but made popular by the late President Jalal Talabani, who was the leader of the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan. On the other side, the other Kurdish side, that is the Kurdistan Democratic Party, the KDP, Kirkuk is being referred to as the heart of Kurdistan. But no matter what the designation is, it refers to the importance that Kirkuk holds for the Kurdish movement in Iraq.
And it's among these contested territories, right, where the Kurds say this belongs to us, and the Baghdad says, no, it's ours. And it was decided that there would be a referendum held in all of these contested areas, right, when the constitution was being written in Iraq, but that never happened. And in the meantime, in 2017, the Kurds held their own referendum on independence that was fiercely opposed by its neighbors, Iran, Turkey, Baghdad, and in fact, the United States. And after that referendum, they lost Kirkuk, right, which they had in fact taken over, taking advantage of the ISIS advance in 2014. So can you bring us up to speed with what happened after 2017 in Kirkuk, and why today we're seeing this violence erupt? And what does it tell us about the broader relationship between the KRG and Baghdad?
You are right. So basically, after 2017 and the referendum, the independence referendum held by Kurds in Iraq, as a result of a military operation that was actually masterminded and led by the late Iranian General Qasem Soleimani of the Quds Force of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps. So ever since the Iraqi forces, and that is the official Iraqi military, the army, as well as the popular mobilization forces, or al-Hashd al-Sha'bi, which is mainly a collection of pro-Iranian Shia militia groups. They have been the dominant, factions in Kirkuk. And so with the loss of Kurdish control over Kirkuk, Kurdish political power and status in Kirkuk also has been declining. And it's not really only about the loss of official positions, such as the governorship of the province and other administrative departments within the province, but there has been a renewed sort of campaign of the various Iraqi factions trying to, in some parts of the province, for example, renege on the agreements in the past in terms of, returning the usurped lands of the Kurdish farmers to them. So now there has been this renewed, Arabization campaign going on in the province, whereby the local Arab residents who were brought in by Saddam's regime and are sort of known as Arab settlers in the area, have been with the backing and support of the Iraqi army units quite often, keep coming back, to those villages where they had occupied the land in the past and demand them and claim that they actually have ownership over, those lands, which in reality they do not. And, they were sort of the brought in by the previous regime. So all of this has really, renewed attention in the Kurdish public opinion, so to speak, about Kirkuk. And Kirkuk has been, sort of this low intensity confrontation zone between, Kurds on one side and the various groups on the other side.
So the immediate trigger, though, for what we're seeing happening now, which resulted in the deaths of 4 Kurds who were shot by the Iraqi security forces, was the fact that Sudani, the prime minister, said that he would return the building that was the headquarters of the Kurdistan Democratic Party of Iraq, which is the largest, most influential political grouping in Iraqi Kurdistan, that they would return their headquarters to them, allow them to come back. And then the federal court struck that down, which was quite extraordinary, based on a sort of complaint lodged by some resident of Kirkuk. So very political, really, in essence. And the next thing we knew, groups of sort of Iraqi militia-backed individuals being bussed in at least that's the allegation, who then decided to organize a sit-in on the Kirkuk Erbil road, cutting off a very vital artery, and that's when the sort of violence flared up. So going back to my earlier question, what does this really tell us about the state of relations between Baghdad and the KRG, and who is actually behind all of these actions of these Shia militia groups? Is it Iran?
Group that had or played the prominent role in organizing the protests, or the sit-in front of the KDP's former, or the Barzani party's former regional headquarters in Kirkuk, is or was the Asab Ahl al-Haq, or the League of the Righteous, which is one of the numerous Iraqi militia groups actually established by the Iranian IRGC, and is known as a major, basically promoter of the Iranian agenda within Iraqi political scene. So what happened after Prime Minister Mohamed Shia al-Sudani recently ordered the Iraqi military Joint Operation Command in Kirkuk, which had taken over the KDP building ever since 2017, to evacuate the building and hand it over to the KDP. A couple of groups, in particular Asab Ahl al-Haq, the Shia militia group, but also a local Sunni group, which is led by a tribal figure named Wasfi al-Asi. These two groups were really at the forefront of the the broader number of groups that organized a sit-in and protested the Iraqi government's decision. And so they had been there for a week almost. And what that did, as you said, that cut off that main highway between Erbil and Kirkuk, which goes all the way down to Baghdad and the south of Iraq, and it's really a vital artery, as you described it, in terms of the movement of people and goods in the country. And what that did, that blocking of the road by the protesters meant that a lot of these, basically not a lot, every truck and car that would have otherwise used that road, they had to turn around and go through the nearby Kurdish neighborhoods. And as you can imagine, that really, created, a very difficult situation for the locals to have, the traffic on a major highway diverted into their neighborhoods. It affected the livelihoods of a lot of people. They could not travel easily in and out of the city. And so in response to that, there was a Kurdish, protest organized on September the 2nd to protest that. And that eventually, the protest got bigger and led to a confrontation between the Iraqi security forces and the Kurdish protesters, which was basically, the Iraqi security forces, in particular the counterterrorism forces, opening fire, killing 4 of the protesters and injuring over a dozen. So what has all of this led to in terms of the relations between Baghdad and the Kurdistan regional government, or the Kurdish groups in the city, is that it has really, rekindled the tensions that always were there, sort of at a low intensity level. It has rekindled really this, potentially very explosive situation in the province, and it has also led to a couple of Shia political groups, in particular Asab Ahl al-Haq, to emerge as a very important local player in the local politics of Kirkuk. And what that also shows is that the Iraqi government really cannot make independent decisions. And a lot of these groups, such as the Shia militia groups, which are officially part of the government, they play this game where, they have one leg in the government, one leg outside of it. They approve a decision in the cabinet meeting, and outside, they would come and do something like this. So, that makes any degree of trust and ability to deal with Baghdad for Kurds really that much harder.
it may have been an oversimplification to say, Iran is sort of behind all of this, but we do know that Iran is very much opposed to any moves by the Kurds towards independence because they are, facing a sort of separatist threat at home, or at least that's what they claim, even though we know that the Iranian Kurdish groups are very weak and they're inside Iraqi Kurdistan, and Iran has made sure that their hosts, the Iraqi Kurds, keep them on a very tight leash. But still, of course, especially given the mass protests that erupted over the death in custody of a Kurdish woman, and the slogans that came out were Kurdish ones about, women, life, freedom, etc. It's very sensitive for Iran. So obviously, it's very much in their interest to see that the Kurds don't come back to Kirkuk. Would you agree with that?
I definitely would agree with that. And even though there is no, sort of clear, conclusive evidence of any direct Iranian involvement, but the major role played by a group like Asab Ahl al-Haq, which is the Shia militia group, as I said before, and also, sort of stepping back and zooming out and looking at the broader regional geopolitical situation with what is happening in Syria's eastern province of Deir ez-Zor, and the Iranian, the increased Iranian pressures on the Kurdistan regional government in Iraq to expel the Iranian Kurdish opposition groups from Iraqi Kurdistan, that has a lot of people actually wondering out loudly if Iran is sort of, masterminding a broader regional pressure on Kurdish groups. And, there are numerous reasons for that, but as you also said, Iran has been in Iraq pursuing this agenda of expanding the control of its loyal or aligned groups over the Iraqi state, and the Kurdistan region is the only area in the country really that has not been subjected to this pressure, especially the KDP-controlled parts of Kurdistan. And so, there is definitely a very strong Iranian interest and desire for Iraqi Kurds to be brought under the control of Baghdad, in particular at the moment that the Iraqi government and the state more broadly is being controlled by pro-Iranian groups in Baghdad. So this is, like a golden opportunity for Iran, and it would be a double strike, because what that would also mean is that it would have very serious implications for domestic Iranian politics and the role of Kurds as an increasingly important actor within Iranian opposition politics. Is that subduing Iraqi Kurds would really have very or at least Iran would hope, would demoralize Iranian Kurds from pursuing any serious opposition to the government in Tehran in the long run.
Paradoxically, though, one of the main Iraqi Kurdish parties, the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, which shares power with the KDP and the Kurdistan regional government, has very close relations with some of the groups, Shia militia groups that you mentioned, and also with Iran. And indeed, back in 2017, when Iraqi forces moved in and basically kicked out the KDP from Kirkuk, it was broadly alleged that the PUK was somehow complicit in that. And so where does the PUK currently stand in this recent flare-up? And how has it affected the standing of both of these Kurdish parties, particularly at a time when we're talking about new elections in the KRG?
That's a great question. As you rightly pointed out, Kurdish politics is always very complicated, complex, and trickier than it might seem. So you are absolutely right that the PUK party, led by Baful Talabani, has very good relation with some of these Shia pro-Iranian groups in Baghdad and also with the with Iran. But it is also very interesting to see that the group that, as I said, were the main party behind organizing the protest, the Asab Ahl al-Haq, which has very close relations, and with the PUK, the leaders of the PUK and Asab, Qais al-Khazali meet regularly. Asaib's media actually put out, a report that claimed a member of PUK counterterrorism forces was actually, involved in the protests and had shot at the Iraqi security forces, and so that I mentioned that to say that the relations are always a lot more complex and complicated than what it might seem. So despite the fact that PUK has better relations or warm relations with a lot of these pro-Iranian groups within Iraq and with Iran itself, at the end of the day, there is no, Shia or Iranian interest or, an interest or desire on the part of pro-Iranian groups within Iraq as well to see a Kurdistan region standing within Iraq. So the relationship with the PUK is really mostly transactional, and it is aimed at undermining the KRG, which is dominated by the KDP. And they have been, trying to exploit the internal Kurdish divisions to that end.
And then, of course, there's the other big regional player, Turkey, for whom Kirkuk is also very sensitive. And the Turkish official narrative is that Kirkuk is a Turkmen city. And where does Turkey stand in all of this?
Turkey has always had a keen interest in the fate of Kirkuk, and they definitely are happy with the status quo in the sense that Kurds are no longer the dominant party in Kirkuk, and they do not want that sort of outcome most likely, given their opposition to the Kurdish referendum in 2017, and also their long-standing opposition to Kurdish dominance and hegemony over Kirkuk between 2003 to 2017. They of course have on numerous occasions brought up the Turkmen question in Kirkuk, but everybody really knows that the Turkmen population or community or political forces in Kirkuk are not an important sort of determinant of the fate of the city at the end. However, again, this comes to play into the broader picture of the Iraqi-Turkish relations with the KRG in the middle of those, uneasy set of relations between Iraq and Turkey.
Well, we didn't really talk about the Sunni Arabs. Of course, they're also a player in all of this. But, we're running out of time here. Let's hope that the violence abates. It has kind of abated, right? They seem to have put something of a band-aid over it, but it does remain a very serious challenge going forward. And sadly, this is probably not the last time we'll see this kind of violence. Thank you so much, Mohammed, for coming on our show. And congratulations for your new role at the Foreign Policy Research Institute in Philadelphia. They're very lucky to have you.
Thank you so much, Amber. It was a great pleasure to be on your show.
And this brings us to the end of On the Middle East. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Mohammed, and please do tune in again. Thank you and goodbye.